I'm delighted to be here to welcome you and to moderate today's webinar, which kicks off a series of 5 webinars on grants planning and management that our Education and Training Committee has developed for you this year. Over the course of these 5 webinars, which run almost one right after the other, but not entirely, so keep checking back to the CoSA website where the webinar schedule is listed to make sure that you're on track for all of these if you want to take advantage of all 5. We're going to take you through the process of planning grants-worthy projects, grants budgeting, and managing a grant-funded project, as well as managing the unexpected, those challenges and opportunities that often come up during a project. So we hope over the course of all 5 to give you a really good overview of the entire process. And today I want to introduce you to our panelists. Thank you, Becky, who come from several different funding agencies and are going to set the stage for us in talking about the potential funding opportunities that exist for archival projects. And so I'd like to introduce Nicole Ferriolo and Pedro Gonzalez Fernandez. Nicole is the Program Officer for Scholarly Resources at CLIR, and Pedro is the Program Associate in the Recordings at Risk program. They will be followed by Joel Wuerl, Senior Program Officer in the Division of Preservation and Access at the National Endowment for Humanities. And our final 2 speakers from the Institute of Museum and Library Services are Stephen Mayu and Sarah Fuller. Stephen is a program specialist and Sarah is a program officer. They're both from the Office of Library Services in the discretionary program section. So without further ado, I'm going to, let me just say a little bit more about today's agenda, that once our presenters get through their presentations, we have time for Q&A, but I encourage you to ask questions right along in the Q&A box. And I'm sure that our presenters will take questions throughout if they can. And as usual, we'll be wrapping up today's webinar with upcoming webinars and programs that Barbara Teague is going to talk to us about. So now I would like to turn the program over to Nicole Ferriolo, the Program Officer for Scholarly Resources at CLIR. Nicole, welcome, and take it away.
Hi, thanks so much, Anne. So as Anne mentioned, we're with the Council on Library and Information Resources, or CLIR, and we'll be talking about 2 grant programs today. The first is Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives, and the second is Recordings at Risk. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of what we'll be discussing today. So we'll open by providing a little bit of background on CLIR and the Digital Library Federation, and then also talk about our 2 main funding programs that we offer, which are Digitizing Hidden Collections and Recordings at Risk. And then we'll leave you with some key tips for applicants. So for those of you who aren't familiar with CLIR, we are a private, nonprofit, sponsor-funded research organization that supports information in higher education organizations. You may be familiar with our publication series, or Burgundy books, which are available for free on our website at clir.org. Although we're talking about funding opportunities today, it's important to understand that CLIR is not actually a funding agency. And as a result, we tend to operate somewhat differently from private foundations or government funding agencies. So I've listed here some of the many programs that CLIR offers. I wanted to highlight one of our biggest ones, which is DLF, which I mentioned earlier, the Digital Library Federation. DLF is a robust, inclusive community of practitioners who advance research, learning, social justice, and the public good through digital library technologies. DLF engages in a range of activities driven by the community. For instance, DLF was recently a sponsor of Endangered Data Week, a series of 56 events held across the nation to draw attention to threats to publicly available data. DLF also hosts a large conference each year for digital library practitioners called the DLF Forum. This will be taking place this fall in Pittsburgh this year. The CFP is currently open, and you can apply to present at the forum or one of the related pre- or post-conferences through May 22nd, and we encourage you to do so. So there are many more programs available, so please explore them on our website, CLIR.org, and see if there are any other services we can provide to you or your institution. If you look in the chat box, you can find some of the links to things that we've been talking about. So let's get started with the first funding program, Digitizing Hidden Collections. As some of you may know, the Digitizing Hidden Collections program is the successor to a previous funding competition called Cataloging Hidden Special Collections and Archives, which CLIR operated from 2008 to 2014. We held our first digitization competition in 2015. Both the digitization and the cataloging programs have been wholly supported by funds from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. The purpose of both programs has been to make highly significant cultural content available for the purposes of research, teaching, and learning. So at a glance, Hidden Collections awards $4 million annually. Single institutions can apply for between $50,000 and $250,000, whereas partnerships or consortia can apply for between $50,000 and $500,000. Projects may last as little as 1 year, up to 3 years, and funded projects must begin between January through June, the year following the application cycle. CLIR does apply annually to the Mellon Foundation for funding, so it's not guaranteed that we will have a cycle every single year, but we are confident in the Mellon Foundation's commitment to helping important collections become digitally accessible, and we hope that this program will have a similar run to our cataloging program, which lasted for 7 years. The initial deadline for the 2017 cycle has already passed, but presuming we receive renewed funding for the program, the 2018 guidelines and CFP will be issued in mid-January, and the first deadline will be in late March, early April 2018. So I've thrown up a sample timeline here to give you a sense of what to expect from the program. The dates are obviously going to change a little bit in the 2018 cycle, but the overall structure and timing should be approximately the same. So we have a two-stage review process for the Hidden Collections program. The first deadline will likely be in early April, and following deliberation by our review panel, you should receive notification of whether or not you advance to the second round in the summer, along with feedback from the reviewers. If you advance, you'll have time to revise your application for the second round, and the final application deadline, which will be sometime in the fall. You'll then be notified of your status prior to the end of the year, likely in December, and awards will be announced in early January. So the program is organized around 6 core values: scholarship, comprehensiveness, connectedness, collaboration, sustainability, and openness. And these values will directly inform how the review panel assesses proposals. We don't have time to cover all of these, but I wanted to highlight a couple of them. The first and possibly most important is scholarship. This program has always been designed to maximize impact on the creation and dissemination of new knowledge. Another value I wanted to highlight was connectedness. So this is a new value that we didn't add until the 2016 cycle. And the idea is that the program supports projects that make digitized sources easily discoverable and accessible alongside related materials. So this value was added to encourage applicants to move away from siloed projects and to think about how their material could connect with related resources. We've been excited to see applicants propose to work with large aggregators such as DPLA and design projects that prioritize interoperability. Finally, I wanted to talk to you a bit about the value of openness. So the program aims to ensure that digitized content will be made available to the public as easily and completely as possible. So we recognize that not all collections or institutions are coming from the same place, and there may be legal and ethical constraints to openness. That said, the easiest way to hurt your application is to demonstrate a lukewarm commitment to openness by, for instance, requiring non-commercial users to pay fees for high-resolution images without giving a strong justification and compelling reason for doing so. So CLIR does have 2 firm requirements that are related to openness. The first is that all metadata created through funded projects must be dedicated to the public domain. We will, however, make exceptions for culturally sensitive material. The second requirement is that funded institutions must not impose additional license terms or restrictions to the digitized content that do not already apply to the source material. So let's move on to talk a bit about eligibility for the program. Our grants are awarded to a wide range of nonprofit and academic institutions, and in some cases, government institutions as well. This is provided that the grant funds be used for charitable purposes within the scope of the Hidden Collections Program. If you have questions about your eligibility, you can contact us at hiddencollections@clir.org. So the applicant institution must be located in the United States or an associated entity, such as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico or American Samoa. CLIR also accepts proposals for collaborative projects that include partnerships between the U.S. and Canadian institutions. In terms of eligibility for collections and tools, collections can be in any format, relevant to any subject, and no particular set of standards, technologies, or tools are stipulated as requirements. It's also worth pointing out that cost share is not a requirement for the Hidden Collections Program or for the Recordings at Risk program. So I'm going to end talking about hidden collections by giving a little bit of an overview on our selection process. So decisions on submitted applications are made by an independent review panel consisting of 15 to 18 members. Our review panel includes scholars, library, archival, and museum professionals, and our experts have expertise on a wide range of subjects, including intellectual property, digitization processes, the use of digitized cultural heritage for research, teaching, and learning. And it's also important to note that program staff focus on administration and outreach and do not contribute to panel deliberations or review draft proposals for applicants.
All right, so Recordings at Risk is a granting program administered by CLIR to support the preservation of rare and unique audio and audiovisual content of high scholarly value. The program was created in response to estimates of only 10 to 15 years before degradation and obsolescence of physical carriers, such as wax cylinders, open reel tape, Betamax tape, Super 8 film, leads to the permanent loss of a large portion of content. This is where the smaller, leaner, faster line comes in. We're trying to get things moving by kickstarting a variety of AV digital reformatting projects, hopefully empowering institutions with limited resources, be they technical, financial, or otherwise, and leading to the development of strategies and resources that will help similar institutions get the ball rolling on their own projects. So the program is awarding $2.3 million provided by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation over the course of 2 years. This is going to take place over 4 calls, which I'll cover briefly. Single institutions may apply for between $10,000 and $50,000 to cover digital reformatting costs provided by an external qualified vendor. Finally, the project length can be between 3 and 12 months, and applications must partner with an external qualified service provider who will perform the digitization. All right, this slide covers the upcoming calls. We just wrapped up our pilot, so I've gone ahead and left it off. As you can see, the process is more streamlined than digitizing hidden collections. There's a 2-month block of time for applicants to prepare and submit proposals, and then our review panel will get to work. And don't forget that the applications for Recordings at Risk are lighter than digitizing hidden collections. For instance, we don't have the same emphasis on inter-institutional collaboration. So don't stress out about coordinating as large of an effort in such a relatively brief amount of time. Projects must be completed within 12 months and can begin essentially as soon as the recipients are announced. Okay, so let's get into the 4 core values of the program. These are going to be the primary concerns of reviewers during the application assessment process. I should note that the first 2 values on this list are the most important factors at play. So the potential scholarly and public impact. We prioritize collections that are of high importance to a variety of disciplines and uses and are going to have broad national, international impact. Risk urgency. So how at risk are these materials? This can be related to particularly at-risk formats such as DAT tape or conservation issues like sticky shed syndrome and so on. The long-term preservation plan. Basically, we want to ensure that the digital files created by this project are going to be safe. Is the digital preservation plan appropriate, considering the resources available to the applicant institution? So you're going to need to consider things like storage and data integrity. Cost effectiveness is I suppose important for obvious reasons, but also because we want to develop strategies that can then be adopted by institutions with limited resources. And then finally, I want to add a quick note on access. We are expecting the vast majority of projects to deal with materials that are still under copyright. So you're not going to necessarily be punished for providing limited access to them, such as on-site only access. So our review process is done by an independent panel of 10 reviewers, and they're going to provide a full scholarly and technical review of the proposals. The panel includes audio, film, video, digitization experts, and scholars from a wide range of relevant fields, such as musicology, anthropology, American studies, linguistics, and communications. The basic eligibility requirements between the two programs are essentially the same, with two notable requirements that I'll point out. An organization and its collections must be located within the United States for recordings at risk, and only one application is allowed per institution per cycle for recordings at risk. Finally, I just want to note that there is no definitive list of allowable formats for analog to digital reformatting. All AV formats are okay as long as you can find that qualified vendor to perform the digitization. So you can also feel free to reach out if you have questions about a particular format.
So we'd like to close with some key tips for applicants to our programs. So the first one is to study the guidelines and website carefully and confirm that your institution or project is in fact eligible. We encourage you to align your proposal to the core values of the particular program you are applying to, and to frame your project around a coherent subject. And finally, seek expert input while assembling your proposal. Applying for a CLIR grant is an involved process, particularly the hidden collections one, and it requires expertise in a number of areas: IP, digital preservation, subject matter expertise, metadata, digital reformatting, to name a few. If your institution doesn't have staff with expertise in these areas, consider partnering with another institution who may be able to help you. So thank you again for your time. We'll be around for questions at the end, but you can also contact us at hiddencollections@clir.org or recordings@risk@clir.org. Those email addresses are in the in the comment box. So we'll now pass the mic to Stephen Mayu at IMLS.
Thanks, Pedro and Nicole, and thanks to CoSA for having us today. My name is Stephen Mayu, and I'm joined here by Sarah Fuller. We work in the Discretionary Programs Unit of the Office of Library Services at the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And today we're going to be talking about what IMLS is and what some of our grant opportunities are in the Office of Library Services. So, what is IMLS? IMLS is the primary source of federal support for the nation's 123,000 libraries and 35,000 museums. We make grants, we convene groups, we conduct research, and we publish in order to build the capacity of museums and libraries to serve the public. We're going to show you a little look at our appropriations for 2017. This is our agency's current budget. For those of you who are following the news, you may know we are on a continuing resolution through the end of this week, and that IMLS is currently funded at the 2016 level, which was $230 million. The majority of IMLS's budget is distributed to state library agencies through the Library Grants to States program using a population-based block grant formula. And the remainder of IMLS's budget is divided between our administrative budget, the museum discretionary grant programs, and the library discretionary grant programs. And today we're going to be covering the discretionary grants available to libraries and archives through the Office of Library Services. But you should know that it's possible your institution may be eligible for grants through the museum discretionary program or your state library system as well. So who's eligible to apply? Generally, you're eligible to apply for funding from IMLS if you're a nonprofit archives, museum, or library located in the United States, its territories, or a freely associated state. The museum and library offices have different eligibility requirements, so you'll want to review those carefully. And since most of you are associated with state archives, you would generally be considered eligible institutions, but you should keep in mind the ineligibility criteria when you're thinking about potential partners. While ineligible institutions are welcome to partner with you for a grant, you would need to be the main applicant. And there's more information about this in the guidelines on our website, but the point here is to figure out early on if you're eligible to apply for the program that is of interest to you. And if you have any questions about eligibility, please reach out to someone on our program staff, and we'll have contact information at the end here. I'm going to pass it along here to Sarah.
Hi there, everyone. So the Office of Library Services Discretionary Office administers 4 main grant programs, the National Leadership Grants for Libraries, Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Grant Program, and the Native American and Native Hawaiian Library Services Enhancement Grant Programs. Today we will focus on the first 2, since the Native American and Native Hawaiian programs are quite limited in terms of eligibility. If you have questions about either of those programs, please reach out to us offline and we're happy to talk about them with you. So the program I'll go over first is our National Leadership Grants for Libraries program, otherwise known as NLG. You'll have to excuse us. We love our acronyms as much as everybody else. This grant program supports projects that address significant challenges and opportunities facing the library and archive fields and that have the potential to advance theory and practice. Successful proposals demonstrate national impact, relevance to current practice and challenges, relevant expertise about the topic at hand, and also incorporate collaborations with other institutions and partners. One recent example of an NLG grant that exemplifies these characteristics is the 2016 grant to Amistad Research Center. Through a national forum grant, the Amistad Research Center is hosting a series of meetings that will focus on integrating community archives in the national digital platform. Amistad is collaborating with the Shorefront Legacy Center, the South Asian American Digital Archive, Makutu, and the Inland Empire's Memories Project of the University of California, Riverside to hold 4 meetings. They will convene community archive curators and practitioners, community members, scholars, and digital collections leaders to discuss broader inclusion of these materials in national digital collections. Outcomes of the project will include a summary white paper providing recommendations for increased representation of marginalized communities and people in our digital cultural heritage. The national impact piece is really important here. A successful application will generate tools or resources applicable to the whole field that can benefit the public. Amistad Research Center accomplished this by partnering strategically and thinking beyond what would just benefit its direct collection. And the second program I'll go over is the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Program, otherwise known as LB21, which is more focused on training, continuing education, and other learning opportunities for library and archives professionals. LB21 supports professional development, graduate education, and continuing education to help libraries and archives develop a diverse workforce of professionals to better meet the changing learning and information needs of the American public. Successful proposals include broad impact, collaborative elements, and will work to advance library and archives practice. One recent example of a successful LB21 application is the 2017 grant to George Mason University that was announced just last week. The Center for History and New Media at George Mason University will develop and run a program to train at least 300 public librarians to facilitate local digital history programs across the country. The project will introduce public librarians to a range of historical research methods and digital history skills. The project will result in 2 related deliverables. First, through facilitation of 4 online courses and 4 in-person workshops, the project will train at least 300 librarians on practices and techniques of local, digital, and community history. Second, in support of those training opportunities, the project will develop and launch a curricula of open educational resources which can be used, reused, and remixed by any organization or program. Note that the primary focus of this example is providing continuing education opportunities to library and archives professionals so they are better able to support the public. Successful LB21 grants will clearly define a need in the profession and demonstrate how the proposed work will advance practice through training, continuing education, or other learning opportunities for library and archives professionals. For both National Leadership Grants and Laura Bush 21st Century Grants, you'll be asked to select one project category on the application, either Community Anchors, National Digital Platform, or Curating Collections. Detailed information on each project category can be found in the Notices of Funding Opportunity on our website. While the notices for the next deadline may be slightly different, you can reference the old notices that are currently posted to get a sense for the categories. We also have a number of blog posts that go into detail about each of the categories. I highly recommend you read over those carefully. These categories have been put into place over the past few years, so even if you have applied to IMLS for funding in the past, you'll want to be familiar with the changes we have made. So all applicants will also have to select a funding category, and it's important to pick the category that best aligns with the intent of your project. Sparks grants are small, rapid prototyping projects up to $25,000 and are only available in the National Leadership Grant Program. The remaining categories I'm about to talk about are available in both the National Leadership Grant Program and Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Grant Program. So planning grants can be up to $50,000 and support preliminary project activities. Many people think about this as planning for a larger grant. This may be conducting preliminary research, conducting an environmental scan, or working on creating partnerships to support larger future activities. The National Forum Grant can be up to $100,000 and fund convening experts and stakeholders around an issue of national significance. This could be to support one large meeting or several meetings to establish a shared agenda or understanding in an issue area. And project grants are the larger grants we make in NLG and LB21 and support larger activities and implementations of projects. For NLG, applicants can request up to $2 million, and in LB21, applicants can request up to $1 million. And similarly, research grants are also large in scale and fund investigating key research questions in library archive practice. They are up to $2 million in NLG and $1 million in LB21. There is flexibility within the funding levels, but you should keep in mind that we have limited funding and both programs are highly competitive. We fund very few $1 million or $2 million projects. There is a value proposition that comes into play here. So the higher the amount you're asking for, the more compelling your case must be for how your work will impact the entire field and represent a significant return on investment. We anticipate that the next deadline for preliminary proposals will be in September of 2017. Each application must include an SF-424, which is generated in grants.gov, an IMLS program information sheet, and most importantly, a 2-page preliminary proposal. Applications must be submitted through grants.gov and then undergo peer review. All applicants will receive reviewer comments and feedback, and a small percentage of those will be invited to submit a full proposal for further consideration. Those that are invited to submit full proposals will only have about 6 weeks to write and submit their applications. The required components for the full applications are much more extensive and are listed in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. These are also submitted by grants.gov and will similarly undergo a peer review process. All full proposal applicants will be provided reviewer comments as well, and regardless of whether the projects are selected for funding. And then it's worth noting that the IMLS director makes all final funding decisions. So she will take all of the guidance from the peer reviewers and use that to make her determinations. And I'm going to pass it over to Stephen.
So if you or your institution is thinking about applying, here are some things that you can do to ensure that you are submitting your most competitive proposal. First, you should take a very close look at the Notice of Funding Opportunity on the website and read through the blog posts on the project categories that Sarah just mentioned. You want to choose the grant program and categories that best align with your project. Some other tips. You should read through the preliminary proposals from last year, or, as Sarah alluded to earlier, from our recently announced grants last week for the first cycle of fiscal year 17. Those are available on the news and events part of our website under a press release, or you can use our search-awarded grants database. Those will help you get some idea of what was successful and articulate your project goals as quickly as possible in the preliminary proposal. They'll help you know to include a budget paragraph and to be sure that you are submitting all of the completed and required documents. And I highly recommend having a colleague unfamiliar with your project read through your proposal prior to submitting it. We all get too close to our work, and this will ensure that the proposal you're submitting clearly communicates your project idea. And most importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough, please just get in touch with us. Our program staff are more than happy to chat with you about your project ideas prior to the deadline. Our job is to help people put together the most competitive applications we can. And we are here to help all applicants, so please be in touch. And that's it. We've got our information here. Thanks for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to either of us with questions that you may have. And now, at this point, we'll turn the webinar over to Joel at NEH.
Thank you very much. And it's really good to be talking with you today. We really appreciate the opportunity, all of us, I know, to have a chance to speak with those of you associated with CoSA. And I have had a chance to do this in the past, but have some things to say that are a little bit different than I have in previous presentations to you. So NEH, as many of you know, is the government's primary program that addresses the humanities. It is oriented toward programs in areas such as history, philosophy, literature, the history of the performing arts, history of science, and a wide variety of other kinds of disciplines. We are, however, also geared toward supporting the institutions that are really at the foundation of the humanities, including archives, libraries, and museums. And what I want to talk about today are particularly the programs that are associated with archives. We always like to point out at NEH that even though most of the programs that are affiliated with archival activities reside in the Division of Preservation and Access, there are other programs here that deal with public programming, education, the digital humanities, and it always, I think, is a good idea to be really skimming the entire menu of opportunities at NEH, even though the Division of Preservation and Access is the one really that is targeted the most toward the needs and goals of archives institutions. The NEH has been under an umbrella here for the past several years that essentially we refer to it as an initiative called the Common Good that our current chairman has been promulgating, and the idea is really to take the humanities out of the ivory tower and to bring it to the public at more of the grassroots level. And we've developed a number of new programs in association with this initiative and also kind of retooled some of our existing programs to address this and to really remind people that all of us in some ways or others experience humanities in very impactful ways, and that NEH is an instrument that can help to illustrate that, help to support that. Again, I'm going to be talking primarily here about programs in the Division of Preservation and Access, and these slides will be made available to you, so I won't be reading these things here verbatim, but I'll go into these individual programs a little bit more fully. I'll be talking about preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions, our education and training program, our common heritage program. All of these have deadlines that are coming up pretty rapidly. Our research and development program, the Humanities Collections and Reference Resources program, which is our largest opportunity here at NEH, or that deals with archives, and sustaining cultural heritage collections. Some of you, I think, are familiar with our Preservation Assistance Grants program. It funds a wide variety of activities at a kind of basic level for small and mid-sized institutions. We actually have funded some state archives in this program. You know, you might think of state archives as larger. They can qualify, essentially. We don't have an exact litmus test in terms of, you know, your budget, but in many cases we recognize that state archives are not well heeled, and certainly local government records repositories have been supported to a considerable extent through this program. It provides support for basic preservation assessments and planning, consultation with professionals on specific preservation needs, purchase of storage equipment, furniture, preservation supplies, environmental monitoring equipment, and education and training. And this can be done either on-site by a professional or professionals, or in some cases you have the ability through the support to send staff to training elsewhere. Currently, we're highlighting several of our preservation assistance grants projects through what we're calling our 50 States of Preservation series, trying to identify projects in each state across the union that in some way or another exemplifies what this program is about, and that really highlights the local impact that many of these kinds of projects have had. I mentioned that Humanities Collections and Reference Resources is actually our largest program, and as you can see, it's kind of a big tent in terms of the kinds of activities that it can support, which are very familiar to those of you in archives. Arranging and describing archival and manuscript collections, cataloging collections, conservation treatment, digitization. This program really is NEH's primary source of funding for digitization projects, preserving and improving access to born digital sources, creating oral history collections relating to our Common Good initiative, particularly military history, and other activities that relate to the development of reference resources as described here. I always think that projects are sometimes the best way to illustrate what programs are about, and here are a couple of examples from recent past. We've supported the digitization of the archives of Helen Keller. That's a project that's ongoing right now, and they're doing great work in getting that entire collection made fully accessible online. We're working through our funds. StoryCorps is working along with the Library of Congress to make fully available its back-end database to the very large StoryCorps interview cohort, and that will be publicly available as a result of this project. And we recently featured on our website a project at the Atlanta University Center focusing on African Americans and religion. This is an effort to process collections as well as to digitize particularly audiovisual content. And if anybody's following me on Twitter, you may have seen today I tweeted out a congratulations note to this organization, the Go for Broke National Education Center, which received an award through our most recent cycle to digitize approximately 800 oral histories of Japanese American veterans in World War II. It's still a rather untold story, and Japanese Americans participated for the Allied cause during World War II. I want to point out that through Humanities Collections and Reference Resources, we offer two levels of support, one of which is called implementation, the other of which is called foundations, and this is for planning and prototyping activities. And really the primary purpose of this is to support collaboration and collaborative planning. And we've had some excellent projects that have come through this particular opportunity and that have, in essence, graduated to implementation now. We've had this opportunity on the books for about the last 4 years. And here are two of them. College Women, which was organized by Bryn Mawr and involves the Seven Sisters Universities, and then the Japanese American Digitization Project through Cal State Dominguez Hills. So we have some new things coming up for humanities collections and reference resources as we prepare to release the new guidelines, and I guess that gives me an opportunity to say that indeed we are in business. We have been making awards, and we are posting guidelines for upcoming competitions. And one of the things that's going to be featured this time around is within that foundation's sub-opportunity, something that we're calling a partnership and mentorship opportunity. And it's really intended to be a source of, essentially of uplift for smaller institutions with outstanding humanities collections that could benefit from, in most cases, technical support, but also in other cases really from perhaps additional humanities input in putting together excellent projects. And our hope there, too, is that these will not be simply one-off projects. We're really trying to nurture longer-range collaboration and really kind of hoping to establish relationships that can go forward well into the future beyond this particular planning opportunity. We're also going to be focusing greater attention to incorporating perspectives of cultural communities that are subjects of grant projects. There's language on that in the guidelines. Less stringent cost-share stipulations for single institution projects. People will be grateful to see that. Our stipulations for many years have been kind of a 50-50 cost-share expectation. Going forward, we will say essentially that NEH can pay no more than 2/3 of the project cost. So, expecting perhaps a 1/3 cost share from you all as grantees. And then for digital projects, we want more information on how you will ensure that data can be repurposed. Talk a little bit here about our education and training program. It has supported graduate education in preservation and access areas, including audiovisual holdings, and Moving Image Archives Preservation Program at NYU is an example of that. And the Digital Power Project is another one we like to highlight. This is an effort that was coordinated out of Northern Illinois University and that our colleagues at IMLS were first funders of in their effort to develop protocols and standards for digital preservation with reduced resources. And I note that IMLS now is supporting a kind of continuation of the education and professional development that we supported a couple of years ago. So it's good to see that that program is getting new legs and new support from our colleagues at IMLS. We have a research and development program that focuses on development of best practices and standards and opportunities to bring people together to really kind of move the ball forward in larger issues in the field of preservation and access. And we have support at two tiers in that program, $75,000 for up to 2 years and $355,000 for up to 3 years. Those projects tend to be very highly collaborative and again, tend to be oriented toward the professional field very broadly. Examples of that include efforts recently to focus on Native American collections and the development of cultural input and local traditional knowledge in the development of metadata and description, and this QC Tools project that focuses on audiovisual holdings, and social networks and archival context, which is a project that goes back several years now. We were a first funder of this, and it's really been an early adopter and demonstrator of linked open data, and they've moved considerably beyond this research and development program that we funded about 8 years ago now, and are working toward building a cooperative program through with the assistance of the National Archives. Sustaining cultural heritage collections, I'm just going to say a few words about this. This is our effort to focus on preservation in terms of macro physical plant issues, where the concerns really are about climate control, pest management, security, fire suppression, et cetera, and where the focus that we're asking for is to be on sustainable approaches to that, going beyond kind of the traditional ideas of sort of rigid set points in temperature and relative humidity, for example, and looking at what collections really need and how buildings can really function to help do the best job they can in supporting preservation for archives, manuscripts, museum, and library holdings. Georgia Archives, State Archives, was a recipient of one of these awards a few years ago, an excellent project. And our Common Heritage Program is one of our newer programs associated with the common good. This is an effort to, an opportunity for institutions to invite content from private individuals and families and institutions that are held in private custody. As we all know, there's more documentation still in private hands than there are in archival repositories. And this recognizes that and invites, through digitization events, the public to bring in their materials, have them digitized, and then made more fully available through a variety of platforms, in several cases connected with the Digital Public Library of America. New twist in the Office of Digital Humanities, and with apologies here, the deadline actually is June 6th. This is a slightly older slide, but we wanted to mention that there's no longer a Digital Humanities Startup Grant or Implementation Grant program. They've conflated those into the Digital Humanities Advancement Grants. This, too, is a rather elastic grant program opportunity, one that IMLS is collaborating with us on, and it provides support for efforts that are pointed at kind of newer, more experimental approaches to the use of technology in the humanities. And also with the IMLS component of this, really aiming at collaboration between libraries or museums and digital humanists as well. And I want to mention that we do have another initiative, our Imperiled Cultural Heritage Encouragement, this awful quote from the previous campaign, and as some of you may recall, of course, that's what Aleppo is now, regrettably. And our initiative really is to try to shine a light on the importance of protecting and really resuscitating, to the extent possible, heritage, cultural heritage in these endangered areas, often through the use of digital technology. And finally, our National Digital Newspaper Program, Chronicling America, in association with the Library of Congress. We now have roughly 12 million pages of newsprint in that repository through the Library of Congress. Most of the states in the country have contributed content to that. We have just a few that we hope will still become partners in this enterprise. And it's really been one of the most heavily used resources at LC, and one of the most heavily used resources that NEH has supported over the years. It's been a very, very strong success for us all. And finally, I would just say that I think our advice to applicants, prospective applicants, really echoes a lot of what you heard from my colleagues at CLIR and IMLS. The first rule of grant seeking, of course, is that in order to receive one, you must ask. Really don't be intimidated by the process, and by all means do contact us. As you heard from the others, we are all here for that purpose of helping you through that process. NEH does read draft applications for many of the programs, and we're really happy to hear from you about your ideas and to do what we can to help. So thank you very much, and it's now time to turn it back over to Anne.
Thanks, Joel, and my thanks to all our presenters today. These are all experienced program officers and program specialists, and I know from personal experience that they are great resources throughout the development of a project. So when they say take advantage of them, follow their advice. Now's our time for questions, and we already have one question posted from Beth Shields from Kentucky. And this really, I think, is to all of you. How many initial proposals are submitted each year? Who'd like to start?
I'm happy to start. This is Stephen with IMLS. And I can say that we generally get, it depends on the cycle, but I can say most recently we got a little more than 160 applications across the two programs, across NLG and LB21 in cycle 1. And, you know, that's varied, but it's generally between 100 and 200 applications.
And we have 2 deadlines a year, so that will happen twice a year that we get that many applications.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Joel. I can say that for a couple of our programs, at least, a couple of our larger ones, the preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions, typically the numbers received there are in the low 200s. And we try to fund upwards to 25 to 30% of those. In humanities collections and reference resources, the numbers over the past few years have been in the 220s. And there the competition is a bit more, a bit stiffer, if you will. The ratio has been around 17 to 18% over the past few years.
And what about CLIR?
Yeah, so for the Hidden Collections program, we typically range, we haven't had that many competitions, but we've ranged from the 120 to 170 applications for the initial round. So for us, because we have less money to give out, it is a lower funding rate than we would like. We've typically had about like 11, 12% for the Hidden Collections program.
And can I just say, oh, please.
I was just going to say, recordings at risk is a little too new to say. We've only just ended our pilot call, of which we got 30 proposals for it, but we also had to restrict a lot of things, such as formats that were applicable. So.
But you're looking at like maybe a 20%.
About 20%, yeah.
20% funding rate?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add that in the case of the NIH programs where we read drafts, the funding ratio goes up significantly for those who have submitted drafts in advance. Every year we try to analyze that kind of success rate, and it's really quite interesting to see how much improved your chances are if you go through that process.
I would also build off of what Joel just said. At IMLS, I think because we do the 2-page preliminary proposal process before the full proposal process, there's a lot of opportunity for applicants to receive feedback from not just the reviewers, but also from IMLS staff. So in the cases where people have not been invited to submit full proposals, they have more often than not come back with significantly improved preliminary proposals, and many of those have gone on to receive funding in the few years that we've been doing this. So I would definitely highlight what Joel just said as well.
And with CLIR too, with Hidden Collections, between the first and second round, the funding rate goes up significantly. I would imagine it's closer to 40, 45%.
Mm. So I have a question for all of you that kind of builds on what you've just been talking about, and that is, how often do you find yourself spending time with potential applicants, helping them talk through a possible project before they even kind of, you know, type the first sentence of a preliminary proposal? Do many of your potential applicants just want to get in touch and talk through some ideas?
So at CLIR, we're a little different. So CLIR has an itty-bitty staff. There's only 16 of us at the organization. There are, if you add up all of the percentages of the different people who work in Hidden Collections, I think we come to 2.25% people. And it's similar with recordings at risk, a little bit smaller even. So we do not actually take applicant questions over the phone or in person during an open application period. However, we do take them over email. But we will talk to applicants during a closed application period. So this is pretty far out before the CFP is announced. And so in those cases, we're fine with having more substantial conversations with applicants about kind of these initial ideas. And because the CFP hasn't been released, that really truly is before a single word has been written.
You know, I can say for IMLS, we don't have any numbers, although that's something that we're actually really interested in tracking going forward, just to see exactly how many of our applicants have spoken with us and how many have been more successful because of that. We think that that's what's happening, but just to have the numbers to back it up. But anecdotally, I would say probably it's not a lot, probably about 20%, maybe 30% actually speak with us before the deadline. And it's something that we've definitely been encouraging more and more and trying to get the word out about because, you know, we're really excited to talk about these ideas and to help people figure out what program would be the best fit for them, or if they have some things that they're considering but they don't even have a fully fledged project yet, it's a great opportunity to kind of discuss with them other people working in that space and maybe which direction they should be going in. So really it's the earlier the better for us.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah on that, and we really encourage that as well, and do have quite a few people who will call us and actually, you know, kind of tap us on the shoulder at conferences, of course, to do that as well, just to share ideas. And as Sarah was just saying, I think the opportunity to sometimes to get more than one program officer in the room to help talk things through is invaluable, because there are overlapping objectives in some of these grant programs, and as you've heard, there are overlapping goals in some of the agencies and organizations here. So sometimes we're even trying to think that way too. You know, is this an NEH fit or is it an IMLS fit? Is it, you know, perhaps a CLIR project? So yes, we like to hear from people and to try to sort that out in advance. I will say, though, too, there is a lot of virtue in just articulating something, even in brief form, in writing, as a you know, kind of an early step to start that process going to. It just helps to focus the conversation.
Those are all great points.
Another thing I'd like to point out at CLIR is, yeah, definitely reiterating Joel's point about coming to talk to us at conferences. We're at a lot of conferences, often with Joel, and we do not talk with applicants during an open application period, but our window of the open application period for hidden collections for the initial round is actually quite short. It's only 3 months. So the rest of the months of the year, it's totally fine to approach us and kind of pitch projects to us. I mean, obviously we don't judge proposals ourselves, but we can definitely provide feedback there.
That's great. Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions coming through from our audience in either the chat or the Q&A box. So looking at my time, I want to move on and turn the program over to Barbara to talk about upcoming webinars and events. But I just want to take a moment to once again thank all our presenters today. This is really good information, and to encourage our audience to be in touch with these program officers. If you're thinking about a project, even if it's not that fully formed yet, to just talk out ideas and work through the process with them. So Barbara, I'm going to call on you next to tell us a little bit about what's upcoming.
Okay, thank you, Ann, and thanks too to all our presenters. Those are really great presentations for us to think about for what we could do in the future. If you didn't catch their contact information, the recording is going to be available on the website within about a week, or if you need to get in touch with them sooner, just let me know and I can send you their email addresses. We're trying something new this year, which I think everyone will be interested in. It'll be a little bit more informal than a webinar. This time next week, well, actually at 3 o'clock Eastern next week, we're going to have our first Learning Lab conference call. And with the Learning Lab conference calls, what we're trying to do is have a little bit more informal conversation. That'll be a follow-up to the grant webinars. And Dan Stokes from the National Historical Publications and Records Commission will be here next week for a 1-hour conversation. Just dial into the number you see on your screen, bring your questions, and if you don't get the number copied down, I'm going to be sending an email out within a day or two, so you won't be able to miss the information. But please do join us there to talk with Dan about NHPRC programs. And then to our next slide. Okay, we also have our CoSA member webinar series that this is a part of, and we have several coming up. There's a grants planning and grants management for May, followed by a Learning Lab conference call, and more about sustaining a grant program and making it funded for the long term will be in June, followed by a Learning Lab conference call. All the information about these webinars are on our website. You can go ahead and register for the webinars for the rest of the year if you'd like to, and that way you get them on your calendar, because these are only the next two that are coming up along with Learning Lab conference calls. We also have the CoSA Preservica Practical Digital Preservation webinar series that we do with Preservica, and we have the last three are coming up in May and June, Preserving Digitized State Government Records, Governance of Long-Term Digital Information, and Best Practices in Digital Preservation from international perspectives. The first two of these are our regular time on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. The third one, the one in June, is actually featuring speakers from Europe. So we're having it a little bit earlier in the day, so don't be confused by that. It's going to be at 11 o'clock, not at 2 o'clock. And all the information is available on the website as well. We also want to thank all of our corporate sponsors, Ancestry.com, Preservica, Family Search, Gaylord Archival, APPX Software, and SpaceSaver, and our federal funders, NHPRC, and IMLS. We actually have just finished our almost 4.5-year IMLS grant that came from the Laura Bush 21st Century Grants Program. Now that I know, we should have been saying LB21 all these years. We really appreciate that. But we really do appreciate the grant that we received from IMLS to do training for the State Electronic Records Initiative. And the NHPRC grant was to fund our portal for the State Electronic Records Initiative. We do have several upcoming events. There's a one-day CoSA annual meeting in Boise in July. We're waiting on details from NHPRC about the SHRAB Symposium, the State Board Symposium that's going to be in the morning. And then the afternoon, we will have the work session and the business meeting and a dinner. So we will be spending a lot of time together on July 12th. Our annual meeting is followed by the NAGARA conference, which is also in Boise, and information about registering for NAGARA is on our website as well. And of course, many of us will be attending the SAA meeting in Portland and the NDSA meeting in Pittsburgh and the Best Practices Exchange in Boston that are all coming up. Please don't forget to do our webinar evaluations. This actually really helps us so much. It ensures that we're meeting the needs of all of our members and helps us improve what we're doing, and it helps with the webinar offerings that we're planning for the rest of the year. And we do look forward to hearing all your opinions and ideas. We do read them. And please stay connected and informed. We're very interested in hearing from our members. Please take a look at the website for updated information. The PERTS portal, which is actually going to become a little bit easier to submit information to in the next couple of weeks, so we'll let you know about that. And our Twitter and Facebook pages are fairly active, so please follow us there. If you're in the state archives and we're not following you, let us know. And we also will be having Instagram in the next couple of months. We'll see how that goes. So if you all have an Instagram, let us know how it's working for you in your state archives. We really do appreciate you attending today and hope that you will fill out the webinar evaluation for us. When you sign off today, you will be taken to that evaluation, and it really won't take you very long to do, and we will appreciate from hearing from you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Preservica and CoSA webinars and then our next member webinar in May. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.